Ladies and gentlemen, I am so excited. I've wrestled Shawn Michaels before. I've wrestled Kurt Angle. I've hung out with The Rock. But tonight I'm starstruck. I get to hang out with one of my heroes growing up, the one and only Jumpin' Jim Brunzell. Jim, thank you so much for joining us tonight.
My pleasure, Mike. It's always fun to visit people in New Jersey.
Well, I tell you, it's 102 degrees outside.
Is it?
This may look like a studio. This is my garage, so it's about 110.
Oh no, it's gonna be hot. Well, we've had a lot of hot weather, as everybody has, but it's the last couple of days. It's been down to 58 degrees at night, which is just a miraculous change. But we had a high. Well, matter of fact, we had a heat index of 107 last week. But we've got a reprieve for about 4 or 5 days, so we'll take it.
Right. So you meet Greg Gagne in college. You guys are both on the football team. He's your quarterback. What's your initial impression of Greg as a quarterback and just as a man?
Well, he was a very good athlete. I mean, he played football, basketball, and baseball at Mound High School, which is a suburb of Minneapolis, and he was the problem that Greg had at the University of Minnesota. He was slight. He was 6 feet, 170 pounds. And at that time, Murray Warmath, who was the legendary coach for the Gophers, liked his quarterbacks to be able to run, it's almost the veer option that we had. And most of the quarterbacks were about 2.5 or 2.10, and the only time we threw was on third and long, and then he'd throw a 5-yard out. So it was Greg sort of realized that right off the bat that he wasn't going to play quarterback. So after his sophomore year, he transferred to the University of Wyoming. I continued to play football. And then, after we were done, I had a week tryout with the Washington Redskins in 1972 as a free agent and didn't get asked back. So I thought, well, I'm going to go to school and get my degree. I had like 31 or 32 credits left. So Greg called me out of the clear blue sky and said, hey, my dad's going to have a camp, and we got Flair and we got Ken Patera coming back from the Olympics, and we got Bob Bruggers, who was a football player, and Khosrow Vaziri, you and myself. So I thought, why not?
Khosrow is the Iron Sheik, correct?
The Iron Schnook.
Well, so how do they go about breaking you in? Like, how does he propose it to Vern? Did you meet Vern prior to the camp?
Yes, I met Vern in college. Greg and he invited me over a couple times. They lived at a multi-million-dollar house on Lake Minnetonka, which is the big lake in the Twin Cities. And he, Vern was a self-made millionaire and a very successful wrestling promoter with the AWA, and he had broke in a lot of big talent, a lot of guys, and out of our class, when you look at it, he had Ric Flair, who's done pretty well, and then Kenny Patera, who did well, and the only one who didn't really do well was Bob Bruggers, and that's because he was in a plane crash and hurt his back severely. He was lucky to be alive. And then you have Khosrow, and then Greg and myself, and I had a great tag team relationship with Greg for 10 years, and then I went and had one, almost 5 years with Brian as a Killer Bee in WWE. So, we had a pretty good, successful camp.
What was the actual training like?
It was hard. We started out and we'd have like about a 2-mile run, a trot, and then we come back and it was a barn. And we started, I just found this out, and I'll tell you, it's sort of unique. We started on September 25th, 1972. And the reason why I know that is because the Nature Boy, Ric Flair, called me yesterday and wants to have a party in Tampa to celebrate his 50th anniversary of our camp. So he asked me, and I said, I don't know. I said, I knew it was sometime in, the fall. And he said, well, God, I got to have a date. So I called Ken Patera, and Ken is really good with numbers. So Ken says, hey, I just got out of, I got back from the Munich Olympics. And he says, 8 days later, he said, I got home on the 17th of September, and 8 days later, we started the camp. So 8 days later was the 25th, and it was on a Monday. So that flew with Rick, and who knows if we'll have a party. He might have a party. He would just forget to invite us.
Were you excited to team with Greg? Did you want to be a singles?
Well, I think I started out when I first started wrestling. I didn't stay too long in Minneapolis. I stayed about a month and a half, and then they sent me to Kansas City in the Central States League. And cripe, we wrestled every single night. We drove to every town, and they put me with a kid by the name of Mike George, who was a very good amateur wrestler from St. Joe, Missouri. And we did real well. We drew a lot of money and did very well. And then I was down there, I think, for about 13 months. And then Vern suggested that I come back to Minneapolis, but he wanted to send me to Japan for 5 weeks. So I went from Kansas City to Japan for 5 weeks, and that was really a learning experience there. And then I came home, and then they tagged Greg and I up for I think it was about 5 years. And then I decided I wanted to go on my own, and so I went down to Charlotte in the Mid-Atlantic in 1979, and I was down there for 16 or 17 months. So that was great too, because I got to wrestle with Flair there, and Jimmy Snuka, and they had a lot of great talent. Ricky Steamboat, who was incredible. Plus they had, again, they had the Briscoes and the Funks coming in, and it was very good for me, because I saw a different talent, and I saw the way they worked in the ring, and you learn by that. So that's what I tried to do.
You went back to the AWA for a second run, correct?
Yes, I went back in 1981, and it was funny because I went to Japan first again, and they tagged me up with Nick Bockwinkel, who was the AWA heavyweight champion, and for some reason they needed a partner for him, so I was free. So that was a real unique opportunity to wrestle very aggressively in Japan with such a caliber of a partner as Nick Bockwinkel. Was really great. So I was really blessed, Mike, with my career. I had a lot of good guys to work with. I had a lot of guys that helped me, and I was it was beneficial to me, and I couldn't believe that I made it, counting all the years, 27 years.
You're talking about talent. I mean, that early to mid 80s AWA talent. I mean, like you said, Nick Bockwinkel, you had Ray Stevens, you had Pat Patterson, You had Blackjack Lanza, you had Bobby Duncombe, you had Ventura, Hogan, Heenan. I mean, what a talent roster that was.
Yeah, it was. And I've always said this, I thought the greatest all-around talent that I had ever met in this business was Bobby Heenan, because he could do it all. He was in the ring. He took a beating every night, and he at the WWF or WWE, at one time he managed about 3 or 4 guys. So he was walking, to the ring a lot of different times. And he was so witty and so quick. And the more he drank vodka, I'll tell you a story where I was in Madison Square Garden the first time in wrestling there. And he said, I'm going to take you out to this bar. So afterwards, and we had a couple beers, I think, after the matches at the Garden. We were walking down outside the Garden, and he was going to show me this bar. And he says, you know what I like about Manhattan? I said, what? He says, they don't care what you do. And he took his pants and he pulled them down to his ankle, and he didn't have any underwear on, so he's bare naked. It's about 11:30, and people were walking by us, and he says, they don't care. And he pulled his pants back on, and I thought, oh, Jesus, any other city, they'd arrest you for that. But, that was Bobby. He was such a character, and I miss him dearly. And I just found out his wife passed away 2 weeks ago from cancer, Cindy, and she was. Well, I hope I'm sure they're united now and in each other's embrace. But Bobby was one in a million. Can I tell you a real quick story? Real quick. This
Please.
It's
Quick.
funny. Okay.
I got one
So
right now, Jim.
okay. So Bobby comes into town, and this is after he was done wrestling, and I don't think he had the cancer yet or not, but so he had a book and he was promoting, and I picked him up at the airport, and we went to WCCO, which is a big radio station in the Twin Cities. It goes all the way to Iowa and in the North and South Dakota. It's huge. So there's a character, and his name's Dark Star, and he's on at night, and he's a big wrestling fan. And he loved Bobby. So we get there, and he starts talking to Bobby and talking about this and talking about that. And then he said to Bobby, he says, Heenan, he says, "Doggone it," he says, "I've seen so many matches where you get hit by on the head with a folding steel chair." He says, "Do you know how many times you've been hit in the head with a steel chair?" And Bobby, without a break, he looked at him and he says, "You know, Dark," he says, "I've been hit so many times on my head with the steel chair." He says, "The top of my head smells like ass." And Dark Star fell over in his chair laughing because we're live on TV, live on radio. And he was so funny. And I started laughing. And Dark Star says, "Heenan, you kill me, you kill me." But yeah, he was he was the greatest, I thought, all around. Yeah, dear friend too.
Great.
And the more he drank, the better he got.
Don't we all?
Yeah, I said, "What do you got for the flight home?" And he says, "I got an expensive bottle of vodka." So he pulls up a plastic bottle of Pop Off, it was called, or Pop Off, or I can't remember, but it was it was probably $7.50 for a fifth of it,
Oh man. Any good Ventura and Adonis stories in the locker room, in the ring, with fans? I mean, those are two guys who are just polarizing figures, especially Adrian Adonis. I don't know much about him. Any good stories about those guys?
Well, was the success of that that tag team was Adrian was wonderful in the ring. Jesse was a little clumsy, but Jesse was so good on the microphone, and he knew it, and he believed it. So, he could talk, and he was this and that. And then Adrian in the ring was incredible, and even though, then when he came to New York, he gained all that weight, and he just wasn't himself again, never did recover. But they were a great team, East-West connection, and we drew a lot of great money with them, and they were fun to work with. And Adrian had great timing, just great timing in the ring, where Jesse was a little slow, and Jesse never was known for taking bumps. He just sort of slid down or whatever, but he sure could talk. So
why did you leave the AWA? Who contacted you from?
Well, here's the deal. Here's the deal, Mike. What happened was when Hulk Hogan, you had Hulk, Gene Okerlund, Bobby Heenan, oh Christ,
David Schultz.
Yeah,
David
Schultz was. No. He wasn't that over in the AWA, but they all went to the WWE or WWF, and this is what happened at that time. There was 26 different areas you could wrestle in, Mike. All of a sudden, Vince says, "Hey, I'm going to do one thing, man, and we're going to go for it all." And he had the Golden Goose, Hulk Hogan, and that was the only way he was successful. So he had Hulk. And then what happened was he had 60 of the top wrestlers in this country, and he ran 3 towns a night with 20 guys in each town, and away we went. And I remember we never looked back. And I've kept a book. It's a little Franklin book that's built for business, day-to-day month to month, week to week, whatever. So I kept that, and I had those books for 20 some years. And I looked up my books from my time in the WWF, which was 3.5 years, and then they got fired, and then I worked another year. I was there from like 85 until 94, but I got fired 3 times. So, but I forgot what I was going to say about
your books.
Here's what it was. We started wrestling as a Killer Bees, and we averaged, this is no lie, for 3.5 years, we wrestled 27 days a month, every single month. And that was a different town every night, different airplane. It was just ungodly, the travel that we had. It was just a miracle that guys didn't fall apart. A lot of them did, it was rough. It's rough on a family life. It was rough, it was hard to, do everything, but I give the guys credit. A lot of them, it was pretty much regimented. As soon as you got into the different town, you check into the hotel, you go to the gym, you come back, you eat, you take a nap, you get up, you have a cup of coffee, you go to the arena, wrestle, come back, have a 6-pack of beer, go to bed, get up, go to the airport, drop off your rent-a-car, and start the whole thing over again.
So when they brought you in, it was the team of Brian. You didn't come in as a singles first?
Well, I came in actually they just wanted me away from the AWA because they wanted to take the drawing power, of Greg and I, we've been together 10 years. So originally, I don't know. I think Vince, he didn't know what he was going to do with much of the talent, other than there was about 4 or 5 guys, Roddy Piper and Hulk Hogan. And let's see. Who else was? Well, those 3 guys, Jimmy Snuka, that he revolved around, but Hulk was, like I said, the golden goose. He was making $50,000 a week on royalties alone, just T-shirts, lunch pails, hats, whatever, 50 grand a week. Plus, in 1985, I have in one of my storage boxes, I have a Sports Illustrated. And it's got a picture of Hulk Hogan on it, and it says, America's top banana, $10 million a year. He was the highest paid athlete, 1985.
Wow. What are your thoughts on Hulk Hogan?
Well, he was, the WWE today would not be what it is without him. He was the golden goose. They worked the daylights out of him, and he performed constantly. And it's hard being in his position because all of it, some of his friends said, hey Hulk, I need a bump, I need a program, I need some sort of a feud where I can get something going. And and he's hearing that all the time. And then he had his own thing to worry about. So other than Eddie Leslie, Dizzy or Brutus Beefcake, and David Schultz, I think those were about the only 2 guys that he really took care or tried to take care of. The rest of us all just sort of blended in, and did the best we could.
What were your initial impressions of Brian? Did you guys get along? How did you like him?
Brian was good. I mean, I will admit I was a little disappointed. I didn't want to be a tag team again. I'd been tag team, for 10 years with Greg, and then 15 months with Mike George. And I thought, well, hey, if that's where I'm going to make my money, I guess that's what I've got to do. So, the Bees were good. I mean, they had promised us the belts a couple times, never did give them to us. We had some great matches with the Harts. We had great matches with, I'll tell you who we had great matches with. The British Bulldogs. We had an incredible match with them. And then also, oh gosh, what's his name? They were called, it was, he's from Quebec too.
The Rougeaus?
No, we had good matches with the Rougeaus. No, he turned out to be the model.
Martel and Zinc?
Yes, Rick Martel And what's his,
Tito?
no,
Tom Zink?
the kid from Minnesota.
Tom Zink.
Yes.
Yeah.
We had great matches with them. So, and we had a lot of good, babyface matches, but at the same time, we had some good matches with heels. I mean, although the Harts were a little hard to work with because of Jim Anvil, or the Neidhart. He was in his own little world. He was pretty hard to maneuver. I remember he was definitely afraid of me hitting him in the mouth with the drop kick. And I told him, I said, Jim, come off the ropes and just put your hand up like that. I'll hit you right there. So he was so scared. We're in a match and all of a sudden he comes off the ropes and I jump up extra highs to give him a little loot so I can hit him good. And he turns his head so that my feet go by his head, miss him. And when we come down, the heel of my boot hits him right here. And opens them up a little bit, and he got up and he filled the ring with just fists left and right. And he hit me so hard in my right side, I thought he damaged my liver. So I'm screaming to Bret. I said, Bret, you better get in here. So, but he was just, he was like a baby bull.
What are the teams
too? He died early, really early. Jesus.
Yeah. What other teams did you guys like working with? You worked with Demolition?
Yeah, we had good matches with the Demolition. You know what the problem was, Mike, there? The heels didn't want to ever give too much to the baby face because they didn't want to lose face with the crowd. They didn't want to show a sign of weakness. And you can't have a match if you don't sell. And consequently we had that, but we had some really good matches with the Harts, exceptional matches, and we had a couple good matches with Bob Orton and Don Morocco, which was amazing.
Yeah.
But it went pretty well. It's just the fact that when we didn't get the belts and we had a couple great matches with the Harts in Buffalo, New York. It was on TV, and we switched and put the mask on and dove over and won and then nothing happened, and the people looked around like, what's going on? And then there was no explanation afterwards. And George Scott, who was the booker, there, I never did like his call as far as booking finishes. I just thought they were horrible. Worst finish I ever had was he was the booker in Charlotte, and I was chasing my belt, Mid-Atlantic Championship with Khosrow Vaziri. So he had beat me using his loaded boot. So about 2 weeks later, I wrestle him on TV. I wind up hooking the sleeper hold on him. As he goes down, I take off his boot. I got his boot and I said, I'm going to wear this boot. I said, I'm going to get my title back. So we're in Roanoke, Virginia, and it's an afternoon shot on, I think it was a Sunday, 3:00 in the afternoon. So I come into the locker room and Sandy Scott, who was George Scott's brother, was the agent there. So he comes up to me and he said, did you get the finish? And I said, no. And I said, what's the finish? And he says, George wants you to do a Broadway, which is a 60-minute draw. I said, you got to be kidding me. I said, I've got his boot. I said, I really don't need his boot, but I've got his boot. I'm going to wear it. I'm a baby face. I'm supposed to be outskilled him. If I can't beat him in an hour, I'm dead. I said, you might as well bury me right in the middle of the ring. I was furious, but we had a match and it worked out okay. And I thought, oh, Jesus. About 2 weeks later, and George threw these Broadways with us, as we went to these spot shows, and we went to this one little, it was a Native American tribe in North Carolina, and he wanted me to do an hour with Khosrow again. And there's 300 people in the crowd, and I thought, well, okay, so we start doing that. the hour draw, and all of a sudden Cowdrell's out on the ground, and he said, I hurt my back, Jim. I hurt my back. So I said, well, don't worry, we'll get a count out. So we got a double count out, boom. And this was after about 40 minutes. So I go home. Next day, I get a call from the office, and they said, could you please come in? And I said, sure. So I go in there, and then George Scott comes up to me, and he says, how come you didn't do an hour Broadway like I wanted you to? And I said, well, Cowdrell hurt his back and told me, his back was hurt, so we had a double count on. And he says, well, Cowdrell said he never hurt his back.
Really?
Yeah, so he fired me. He fired me that day. So, and it was time for me to leave and come back. And so, that's the way it happens in wrestling. You just never know. And my time had run out, and that was fine.
I was going to ask you if you had any Iron Sheik stories, but that's a damn good one right there. Wow.
Well, I'll tell you another one about him too. So we're wrestling in Richmond, Virginia, and it was for the Mid-Atlantic title. And somehow or other, I made a big comeback, and I false finished him a couple times. And somehow or other, he got a rope or something. So he gets me tied up with this rope around my neck, and he's really choking the crap out of me to the point where I'm almost unconscious. He doesn't realize what he's doing. So he goes to throw me out of the ring, and I could barely go out of the ring. And when I went out of the ring, I hit my brow on the cement, and I had 29 stitches in here. First time I've ever needed stitches in the wrestling match, and it was Cowdrell. I forgive him, though. I know he's having some tough times now. And matter of fact, I did there was three of us from the AWA that did, because he started with us, did a documentary where they interviewed us, and it's going to come out this month. So you'll have to look for it. I think it's A&E on it's from LA, and it's about Cowdrell, and
Who else did it with you?
Let's see, Greg Gagne, myself, and there was two amateur fellows that helped him, when he came from Iran at the university, the Greco-Roman style guys, Dan Marcy and Dan Chandler. So they took, God, it was a long day. It was like 6 hours. And they interviewed us, and we told stories about Kaz and this and that. And it was, he's had some horrible tragedy. His daughter got killed, and he's had some problems with some issues, as far as drugs and alcohol. But he seems to be coming around, and that's good. And he's such a character. I remember Greg, when Cowdrell first started, Cowdrell says, nobody's got a stronger neck than me. I've got the biggest neck, stronger, da, 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 da. So Greg says, I don't think you do. And Cowdrell right away says, I'll show you. So Greg says, okay, come here. So they're standing by this wall, and Greg puts his hands locked like that behind Cowdrell's back of his head. And he says, you try to, break my deal. So Cowdrell's straining, and all of a sudden Greg lets his fingers go, and Cowdrell hits the back of that concrete with the back of his head, and he went all the way down to his rear end, and his eyes were crossed and everything. And he got up and he says, Greg, he says, that wasn't very funny. But yeah, he took a lot of ribbing when he first started, and he tried to get back at the end, in some ways, and it just didn't suit him. Yeah. He got stopped with Jim Duggan right there in Asbury Park,
New Jersey. Yep.
Sure did. I remember that. Jeez, and neither one of them got fired. No. No. And they were working with each other.
Yeah.
Jesus. And that stemmed from WrestleMania 3. When it was Volkov and the Sheik against the Killer Bees, and we were false finishing them, and then they turned the tide on us. So Duggan comes in with the big 2x4 and gets us disqualified. And this was another George Scott finish. he said to Brian and I, he says, yeah, you guys congratulate Jim Duggan for helping you guys. And I said, are you kidding? I said, he wanted us to lose the match. Well, just, Pat, I thought, oh, yeah. So, but that was, it was fun being a part of that WrestleMania 3. But,
now, why do you think they didn't give you the tag belts? Was there ever a reason, or they just?
Well, Vince didn't like us, period.
Okay.
He didn't like us. And Brian still differs in opinion on that, but I know he never did. He never did like us. And the fact that we were both, friends of Terry Hulk, I think he sort of took care of us a little bit, but never, we never were, given the belts, and we would have had a hell of a run because we could have turned heel with those masks and presented a different, a totally different scenario going into matches. But you can't fight City Hall, and I know Brian was just really, really disappointed, as I was too, because if you get a chance to wrestle for the championship, a couple, 2-3 times and you don't get it, then the fans lose faith in you. And then you lose drawing power. You don't draw.
One of my questions was next going to be the masks. When my dad and I used to watch wrestling, my dad's favorite thing was when you put the masks on, and Jesse Ventura would say, "That's the illegal Killer Bee." He makes a big deal out of it. Who thought of the masks? Whose idea was it? And you brought up a good point. It is a heel thing to do rather than a babyface thing. Yeah, that's why it worked.
It did. We were in Canada, and Billy Red Lyons had mentioned, being the Killer Bees. And then he thought it'd be great if we wore a mask. And I thought, God, what a great idea, because none of the baby faces wore masks. And at that time, there was no heels in the territory that wore masks. The only people that wore the masks were the luchadors from Mexico, and every one of them wore a mask. So it was quite unique. And occasionally, on Halloween, I'll put my jacket on and my mask, and I'll scare the kids as I open up the door for the trick or treats. And then I have a good friend, his name's Scott Mueller. He's a mortician, our local mortician. And I have a running joke with him. I said, hey, when I get cremated, I said, well, would these artificial parts be worth any money? And he said, no. But I told him, he says, what do you do with your masks now? Where do you keep them? And I said, I use them every week for a bank withdrawal. He laughed. So
I used to love when you do a 6-man with like JYD or Coco Beware.
Oh God, yes.
They'd wear the mask like he couldn't tell which one was the Killer Bee. I love that.
Well, we had that. This killed us. This was in Lake Placid. This was in 88 or 89. And it was an 8-man tag. And it was Brian and I, Coco Beware, and George the Animal Steel. And at the end of the match, all of us had the masks on, and George the Animal Steel had it on crosswise, and he was trying to eat the turnbuckle. And then Coco Beware was dancing the bird. And I looked at Brian and I said, well, we might as well forget about this Killer Bee gimmick because I think it's dead right now,
Why did they break you and Brian up?
Well, I think we'd gone as far as we could. And I think Brian was, at this point, I was flat out burnt out. I mean, I was just tired of the road. And I had my own gym in White Bear at that time. So my wife was running the gym for him. And this was from 1982 to 1987. I finally closed it in 1987. But it was just never ending. I mean, even though the gym was taking care of itself, but as a proprietor, I was gone, except for a couple days a month. And, I'd go there and I'd take a look and make sure everything was functioning. And then I'd take a 15-minute steam bath at 190 degrees. And then I had the hot tub at 105. So I made sure I used those once a month at least.
So Brian leaves and you stick around for a little longer, correct?
Yes.
I remember, I tell you, there's a house show and there's a TV match with you and Kurt Hennig that I would put up with against any match, anybody at any era. amazing, amazing
Well,
work.
see, Vince tried to rub it in on me. I needed to work, like I told you, Mike, because I needed money to complement the gym. So I knew, and he had me doing jobs on TV, and then he had me on the road, and it hurt me immensely. But I thought, well, hey, I need the money, and I'll never forget. And you can look this on TV; it's on there. It's Randy Savage and I when he had what's her name? It wasn't Elizabeth. It was
Sherry.
Yeah.
You hit him with a drop kick, right?
In his mouth. Yeah, and he spit blood, and I thought, oh God, I knocked his teeth out. But we had a hell of a match, and after we got done with the match, walked through, and it was, I think, it might have been on a Monday Raw or something. I don't know if they called it that or what. But Vince is standing there, and he said, gentlemen, he said, that's the best TV match I've ever seen. That's what he said. So it made me feel good, but who knows? He might have said that, 20 times to different people, but we did have a good match. And I remember having the match with Kurt Hennig in a number of towns. Yeah, Kurt was wonderful. And there's another pathetic, occasion where somebody, is just hooked by that demon drug, and it's just, just look, Mike, all those guys that have died. I mean, from that era, I mean, those guys were all in their, late 30s, early 40s. And I mean, they were dropping like that. It was horrible. Yeah. Horrible.
What do you think of what's going on right now with the World Wrestling Federation, or WWE, I should say, and Vince McMahon and all the scandals? Like, what is your opinion on this?
Well, it's just like the Roman Empire, the Roman Empire goes so far, and then all of a sudden, boom, and down it goes. And that happens with it's cyclical. And the fact that, Vince, who, is a billionaire and had, a lot of different incidents that sort of chipped away at what he was doing. And I just think now that more or less that the word's out about this and his infidelities, this and that. And then I find out he's divorced from Linda, and, and then Hunter Helmsley needs a new heart, and it just, so I asked Hulk a long time ago about Vince McMahon, who I thought he was crazy. I mean, he is, he's out there. And I asked Terry, I said, Hulk, I said, about Vince, I said, what's going on? I said, I said, is he capable of this? And you know what he told me? He said, Vince is capable of anything and everything. That's what he said, and then walked away. So, but I'm thinking right now they're trying to sell the WWE, and it'll probably be somebody like Amazon or Disney. But the fact that, the owner and leading stockholders, and that proved to be true, is going to hurt him. So right. Who knows? But I don't watch the wrestling anymore. I occasionally I'll watch it. And to me, Mike, it's all the same. I mean, there's really no baby face, there's no heel. They're all the same. They talk their rap and they do their stuff in the ring, and nobody sells too much. And they're doing all this goofy, stuff that is very athletic, but the timing is just not right. And you watch that, and I watch it in AEW, and everybody comes out. There's not a soft-spoken guy. They're all screaming. They're all saying how great they are and this and that. And it's sort of killed itself. The only thing I'm happy for is that the majority of guys are getting good money now, and, as independent contractors, and this, Mike, never know what you're going to get paid. You're at the mercy of, the promoter. And I remember one time I told Vince, I said, Christ, I said, last month I was making $4,000 a week, I made 20 grand or 16 grand for the month. And I said, this next month, I said, the houses were bigger and I wound up making, half of that. And I says, how do you, clarify that and justify that? And he says, oh, I guess I'll have to talk to my accountants next, and then that was it.
You're still waiting for the explanation, I bet, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Oh,
I'll tell you real quick. First day I was in, as a matter of fact, I got this hillbilly. I don't know if you can see it. I got this hillbilly Jim.
nice.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Love
I just talked to him today. He's a great guy and a great friend. First guy I ever met at WWE, but I remember flying into LaGuardia, and then we took this little 14 passenger prop plane and Hillbilly was on it and we flew into Poughkeepsie. So this is my first day. It's like June 27th, 1985. So I go in there and
June
yeah,
27th.
is it really? Well, I'll remember that. So Gene Okerlund, who I've done oodles of interviews with, and we do a babyface interview. So he's asking me about this and that and now what I'm looking forward to about the WWF at that time. And I told him, I said, hey, it's going to be a big challenge and, I'm looking forward to it and see how I do here. So he said, okay, there's Jim Brunzell. And as I walked off, I heard Vince McMahon say to somebody else, oh boy, we got another Backlund. That's what he said. So when I heard that and I thought, oh God, and that's the first day.
First day of work. Wow. Well, Jim, this was awesome. I mean, I can't thank you enough. Let's get to your stuff. So, Jim, how can people find you if they want to get in touch with you?
Well, actually, I'm off Facebook now because I said a couple things political and they sort of scolded me. But I wanted to, this is a book I wrote by myself. It's called Matlands, and it's available by a company called Blurb, B-L-U-R-B, and it's $25. There's a number. I wrote every word of this, and I'll show you something here that you'll probably like. I don't know if you can see this, but it's your friend there, Bruce Springsteen, and my kids. And
wow.
Yeah, matter of fact, here's this picture here was Bruce and I the night of the first show of the Born in the USA tour. And I waited until 2:00 in the morning to meet him. And he was very, very nice. And since that my wife and I have seen him over 60 times.
Wow.
Over, and I'm a little disappointed in this pricing that he had, this dynamic pricing on it. $5,000 tickets. It really upset me, and but I wound up getting some tickets. They weren't nearly that much, but I always look forward to him coming to town. And I know you're in Freehold, or your home is there. And
where can they get the book?
Oh, Blurb online, B-U-R-B, and it's got like 47 stories on it. In it, every word was written by me, my wife, and it took us 5 years to put it together. This picture of me, I was 6 years old, and my dad was in the Navy, and we were stationed in the Marshall Islands out in the South Pacific on an atoll called Kwajalein. And that was me sitting in the little chair. So, yeah, it goes through my high school and college and all the wrestling, and it's fun to do. And I sold a number of books, and the fact that I didn't have a ghostwriter, so I know every time I do one of these, I always sell 10 books at Blurb. So thank you, audience.
So it's B-U-R-B?
No, B-L-U-R-B, Blurb.
Blurb. I will be buying one before I go to sleep tonight. Okay. Blurb. Awesome.
Hey, Mike, it was really fun. Thanks so much. And I appreciate, the different time areas, and I'm glad. I thought it went good. So hopefully have Have a good summer and we'll be in touch.
You too, Jim. Thank you. This was such a thrill for me. Thank you so much.
Okay.
Thank you,
Good
sir.
night. Have a good
Great.
weekend.
You too.
Bye.
Thank you, sir.
Yeah.
Bye-bye.